Creating visualizations with the ggplot2 package in R is a process of layering. And the first layer is a call to the function ggplot. ggplot takes two arguments, a data frame and a mapping, an aesthetic mapping, or an aesthetic, and we'll come back to that in a minute. When you call ggplot, it returns an object of type gg or ggplot, and the keywords data and mapping can be omitted in a call to ggplot. Once you've created a chart, you can write it to a file through ggsave. Now, what is this mapping now, this aesthetic mapping? Well, aesthetics do not concern the appearance of the chart. They concern the mapping from the data in the data frames to elements in the chart you want to create. So, for example, if you want to create a line chart, you will want to take one of the fields in the data frame and map it to the x-axis, and another field in the data frame and map it to the y-axis. And that's what you do in the aesthetic. So the arguments to the aesthetic are x, y, size, color, fill, and call, and the values that you pass into the aesthetic have to be fields in the data frame. Once you've created the ggplot, layer 1, then you layer one or more geoms on top of that. And geoms determine the appearance of the chart. So geom point will create a scatter plot, geom call will create a column chart, geom line will create a line chart, and so on. Where appropriate, geoms can also have their own default aggregation methods for the fields, but as we'll see, these can be overridden. And then finally, geoms can have their own aesthetics as well. So if you want to combine, for example, a point chart with a column chart, then you don't have to put all of the mappings, all of the fields you want in the mapping that you included in the original call to ggplot. Now you can have an additional aesthetic in the second geom that you called, and we'll see how that works in a minute. Finally, once we've layered all these geoms on top of the ggplot object, then we can call functions to improve the appearance of the visualization, such as labs, which adds labels to the visualization, and a large number of scale underscore functions, for example, to change the color in a column chart. Now, to see how all this works, we will create the first visualization we created in Python, namely a scatter plot based on the simplified version of the combination of the economic and chronic disease data. The data was stored in a file 2018 data.xlx, and you can download that as well. The scatter plot plotted the percentage of the population with health insurance against obesity rates. And we're going to do the same in R. So we go to files. I've downloaded the 2018 data file. Now, we already loaded a number of packages in R when we installed tidyverse, but we still need to make sure we have access to functions associated with those packages. So I'm going to load these packages into my instance of R. The first one I want is read Excel to allow me to read Excel files, and then the second one I want is ggplot2 to allow me to create charts using ggplot. Okay, so we've downloaded them, installed them into our environment now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the Excel file into a variable called t. There is a shortcut that is useful to use when you have to do a lot of these assignments. It's Alt minus or Option minus on a Mac, and in that one keystroke you will insert the assignment function. So let's run this. Okay, so we now have t in our environment, but if we go and print t here, then you see that we have a bit of a problem, because t is a tibble, and in order to call ggplot, we need a data frame. The main difference between a tibble and a data frame is that a tibble also includes the type of the column in the column header. Now, fortunately, it's fairly straightforward to, let's do it here, to change this to a data frame, because there is a function data frame that takes a tibble and turns it into a data frame. And now if we print tdf, and we use the right function, print tdf, then you see we now have the information in a data frame. You also notice that the fields, the column headers, field headers, now have a dot in them. So unemployment rate became unemployment dot rate. Okay, so the next step then is to call ggplot and take the and store the ggplot object we create in PLT. Now we can either use data equals and then we type TDF, or we can just do data TDF. So let's do the latter, makes it a little smaller. So we have the data frame. Now we need the aesthetics, and the aesthetics is the fields out of the data frame that we want to map into the into our scatter plot. So the first one is percentage with health insurance. Let's see if we can pick it up. That goes into the x-axis, and then the second one we want is obesity rates. Again, we'll pick it up and then stick it in here. Okay, so that will create the the PLT object for us, a ggplot object PLT. Now what we're going to do is we're going to layer a geom on top. And when you type geom or geom underscore, you see a large number of possible chart options that are available to you. So if we mouse over them, we get some information about what it does. Okay, we can also get that information by typing question mark, and then whatever function we're interested in. If you look at the help, you see in the help you now get access to a lot of information about geom plots, geom points, and what you can do with them. So we're going to add a geom point on top of that, the plot we just created, and when we run that, then in plots, we get a simple scatter plot. Now we're going to want to make that a little prettier. So one of the things we may want to do is, for example, well, we may want to change the color. We may want to change the shape that we use. And we may want to, for example, make the bubbles a little bigger. Again, we can run this. And you see we now have we've changed the appearance of the chart. Okay, now we can further improve it by call a layer with a call to the function labs for labels. And what we're going to do is change the title to something like obesity rates and health insurance So that will give us a new title, as we'll see in a minute. Then we'll also want to change the label on the x-axis to percentage with health insurance. For y, we will probably want to do something like and then we may want to do a caption as well. The caption is what appears at the bottom. Oops. It's going to appear at the bottom here. So caption equals the first scatter plot. It doesn't really matter. Now, it's useful to point out that the function of this x and this y here in the call to labs is different from the function of the x and the y in the call to AES. This x maps a field from the data frame TDF. This one takes the field and maps it onto the y-axis. This one onto the x-axis. This x and this y refers to the label on the y-axis and the label on the x-axis. So let's run this. And now you see that we have a more meaningful a label on the x-axis. On the y-axis we have a more meaningful title, and this is the caption that we have at the bottom. You might, for example, use that to acknowledge where you got the data from. And now what we can do is, once we have it, we can do gg save and maybe call it first. So let's run this. And what this will do, it will save it as an image. So I should be able to get that image up. So see, we have that image here now. So if I go to this, let's see what happens when I click on it here. So when I click on it here, it brings it up as an actual image. Okay. So gg save will allow us to save the images we created in the plots tab.